Arizona Wildcats beat the Oregon State Beavers tonight. The final score, Arizona Wildcats 57 to the Oregon State Beavers 34. Last time the Arizona Wildcats played against the Oregon State Beavers, it was up in Corvallis, um, uh, in Oregon, and so they were home, so um, they had their fan base behind them, so they were doing pretty good. They had some confidence, and then whenever the fans kicked in, then it made even more of a contribution towards the Oregon State Beavers. So they were able to win that game. And one of the reasons, I think, one of the biggest things that I remember about that game, about Oregon State beating the Arizona Wildcats, that last game, the last time they played, was Stanley Johnson with 7 turnovers, and I think that he paid attention to that a little bit. He was kind of upset, I think, a little bit at himself for having 7 turnovers, but to give him a little bit of break, also because he's not used to playing in the Arizona Wildcats jersey, um, and being in a way a hostile environment so much. But Stanley Johnson is a he's a phenomenal freshman. In fact, I think he had 8 points tonight against the Oregon State Beavers. So he didn't score a whole lot of points. He usually gets around, I would say Stanley Johnson for the Arizona Wildcats usually gets around 17, 18, 16 points, somewhere around there. But tonight he only had 8 points. 2 of them were free throws. But I just think that Stanley Johnson, he he had the fan base this time. So that's one of the reasons why he was able to take better care of the ball. He only had 1 turnover tonight. I'm looking at the ESPN stats, so they might be different if you look at the CBS Sports stats, or if you look at stats from the Arizona Wildcats, or the Oregon State Beavers stats. Um, but so that was one thing that I was looking at, and another thing that I heard from Bill Walton. He was talking about the sportscaster. Bill Walton was doing ESPN, was a sportscaster, and he was talking about the hunger and the strength and the competitiveness of Brendan Ashley. But I, to me, Brendan Ashley I think he had 6 total rebounds, 3 of them more offensive, 3 of them more defensive. Uh, he, that's not so great. I know that he did good. I saw some of the plays that he did. A lot of nice putbacks, a lot of second chance opportunities, and following his shots, and not being afraid, and going for that second chance opportunity, and usually knocking it down. So he ended up with Brandon Ashley ended up with 12 points tonight. He was the highest scorer on the team. But as far as the hunger, um, I guess I can say, I could do agree a little bit with Bill Walton. He was a little bit more hungry tonight because he was getting those second chance opportunities. But as far as the amount of rebounds, 6 rebounds, that's about average, I think, for Brennan Ashley. You know, I think the last game or the last few games, he's been getting about six rebounds, and he's been getting quite a few offensive rebounds. And I think that the offensive rebounds are one of the strongest points for the Arizona, one of the strongest, most valuable things for the Arizona Wildcats is offensive rebounds, because whenever you get offensive rebounds, and the it, you it's like you restart the clock. You get another 35 seconds to shoot, and you also you just demoralize. It kind of demoralizes the opposing team. In this case, the Oregon State Beavers. Um, and another thing that I was kind of noticing right in the beginning of this game was the Oregon State Beavers. They came out with a pretty good amount of fire. They had quite a few rebounds. They had more rebounds than the Arizona Wildcats did. But I think that after a while, and I've heard the radio sportscasters talk about this before too, is that the pressure, the defense of the Arizona Wildcats is so suffocating that the first half you can deal with it, but the second half it just gets so difficult to deal with. You can't. It's so hard to overcome. You can't handle it anymore, and that's whenever things kind of fall apart. And that's, I mean, the Arizona Wildcats were ahead by 10 at halftime, and they ended up winning this game by 57 to 34. They ended up winning this game by 23 points. So they did seem to wear down the other team quite a bit. And another big thing was Gary Payton on second. They call him GP2. He had a very good game whenever the Arizona Wildcats played against Oregon State Beavers up there in Corvallis. He scored a ton of points for that game, but this game he was only able to score 6 points, and for the longest time, most of the game for the Oregon State Beavers, Gary Payton II, he only had like 2 points, and he ended up with shooting 3 for 13 from field goals, and he didn't make any of his three-pointer attempts. And let's see, one of the biggest things that you can see is he only had 2 assists, and he had quite a few assists, I think, last game. Whenever the Arizona Wildcats played against the Oregon State Beavers that time. But this time, the ball seemed to be more in the favor of the Arizona Wildcats. And I know that the Arizona Wildcats, this was a home game for them, and it was in McKale, it was in Tucson, Arizona. So they had that fan base, and so they were able to capitalize on that, and that was help build their confidence and maintain their confidence. But Rondé Hollis-Jefferson was a beast. He was all over the place. He had 2 steals, 2 blocks. He ended up with 4 rebounds. He was 5 for 5 from the free throws. So he was doing very good, and he was making a lot of contributions all over the place. And two of those four total rebounds were offensive. So he did really good on getting the rebounds. And then the total amount of assists that the Arizona Wildcats were 11. They had 11 assists. So T.J. McConnell, he had 6 assists tonight, which is very, very good. He had this is amazing. He had 8 steals. T.J. McConnell from the Arizona Wildcats had 8 steals tonight, which is that's pretty unusual for him to have that many steals. Assist to turnover ratio, 6 assists, 2 turnovers. That's pretty good. Pretty good. One thing that I think that Coach Sean Miller from the Arizona Wildcats is not going to be too happy about is the 16 turnovers. The Arizona Wildcats, I think they had, 6 or maybe 8 turnovers in the first half. And so for them to end up with 16 turnovers, Sean Miller's not going to be happy. They needed to take care of the ball a lot more in that second half, but so they're going to need to work on that. But I can hear Kevin Wooden talking in my head, saying, "Well, their Arizona Wildcats are 20-2 now." So, and they won this game by 23 points against the Oregon State Beavers. So, don't be too hard on the Arizona Wildcats for only having 16 turnovers, but that is quite a few turnovers. They shot 4 for 12 from three-point land. Trey Mason, which is not a starter at all, he's definitely a bench warmer. He only played a couple minutes, probably a few minutes of the game. He ended up knocking down a three-pointer. Elliot Pitts knocked down a three-pointer. Gabe York knocked down a three-pointer. Gabe York was 1 out of 4. But the other thing that was really cool about the two guards, Elliot Pitts and Gabe York, there's the three-point specialist guys usually. But I saw Elliot Pitts have a little bit of fire in his belly and dribble penetrate and get a couple of points that time. Elliot Pitts ended up with 6 points, while Gabe York ended up with 4 points. But let's see. Yeah, Dusan Ristic was kind of in trouble this game. He only had one foul, but he just right off the bat the Oregon State Beavers somehow got into Dusan Ristic's head from the Arizona Wildcats, because he had 2 turnovers right almost I think within the first 10 minutes of the game. So he was having an off night, and he only ended up with 1 rebound, and it was defensive. So he didn't have a very productive game. And Caleb Tarczewski ended up with 2 rebounds. He ended up with two personal fouls. So I mean, at least the thing is Caleb Tarczewski, at least he didn't get in foul trouble. He wasn't in foul trouble. In fact, none of the Wildcats were really in foul trouble. Hollis-Jefferson had 2 fouls. T.J. McConnell had 2 fouls. Gabe York had 2 fouls. No one had 3 or 4 or fouled out of the game. So everyone did pretty good there. We had two guys in double figures. Brendan Ashley with 12. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson with 11. So let's see if I can mention anything else. Stanley Johnson with 8 points tonight. 9 rebounds. 9 rebounds. That's very good. He almost had a double-double, but he only had 8 points tonight, and he had 9 rebounds. So he was pretty close. The thing about Stanley Johnson that I've noticed from looking at the stats throughout the season is he gets quite a few rebounds, and I think that's awesome. Not as many offensive rebounds as I would like sometimes, but he gets quite a few rebounds. They might be defensive, but he gets quite a few rebounds, and so I think that is another sign of a fantastic player. And he, like I said, he's just a freshman, and he had 2 assists tonight. He always gets a couple assists in there. He always gets a few, 2, 3, 4 assists in there also, which is kind of uncharacteristic. You wouldn't think a guard would get really too many assists, because Rondé Hollis-Jefferson didn't have any real assists. But then I guess there are some guards. I guess maybe a guard is a good assist person, because Elliot Pitts had 2 assists tonight. I think Elliot Pitts had a pretty nice night with making like a couple assists and getting he had 0 turnovers, and 0 personal fouls. So, you know, and knocking down that three-pointer, so he made some nice contributions tonight. And Stanley Johnson only ended up with 1 turnover tonight, compared to 7 turnovers the last time the Arizona Wildcats played against the Oregon State Beavers up in Corvallis. But here the Arizona Wildcats played against the Oregon State Beavers here in Tucson, Arizona, so it was a home game for the Arizona Wildcats, and that's one of the big benefits that the Arizona Wildcats had. But I wanted to see what happens if it's a neutral court, if the Arizona Wildcats and the Pac-12 tournament is going to go on in March, I think. Will be interesting because that'll be a neutral court somewhat for the Arizona Wildcats and the Oregon State Beavers out there. I think we have more of a fan base than the Oregon State Beavers do, a traveling fan base than the Oregon State Beavers do. So the Arizona Wildcats will probably have a little bit of home advantage up there in over in LA whenever they played the Pac-12 tournament. But the Arizona Wildcats were able to take care of business quite handily, and the next game they're going to play against the Arizona Wildcats are going to play against ASU. ASU just lost by a very slim margin to the Oregon Ducks tonight. But anyway, the game here, the Arizona Wildcats come out with a pullout with a victory very nicely against the Oregon State Beavers. The final score, Arizona Wildcats 57 to the Oregon State Beavers 34.